Hey, what's up everybody? This is Smith24, and today I'm taking a look at the Infinity Gauntlet. This is the paperback trade collection of issues 1 through 6 of the Infinity Gauntlet run, and this is one of those series where I feel like if you read it back in the day, with all the crossover event stuff they were building towards with this, back in the early 90s, you're going to know it by heart, and then there's people like myself who were too young to have been reading this stuff at the time, who are just now catching up with it. And it's interesting that I've noticed with the crossover events, because I've looked at like a whole list of them on Wikipedia and stuff, that they used to be a lot less frequent, which makes sense because you have to get all the characters lined up and make sure that their stories all kind of work in such a way that you can have them cross paths and into these big events and all that. And nowadays you have it where it's so, I wouldn't say like it's not messy at all. It's very like organized the way they have the Marvel Universe these days, but it's also very I don't know, scientific, the layout they have of everything, where they've got stuff planned out pretty much for the next year or two already right now, and there's kind of writing it and then making the paths weave as they go, because there's so much crossover nowadays, not even with just event stuff, but just with the stories in general. Whereas back in the day, it was a little less common, or if you were going to do a crossover, you had to have a really good reason for it, like Infinity Gauntlet here. So, for me, this was something really interesting because I really enjoy Thanos as a character, because he doesn't fit a lot of the, I don't know, typical pitfalls of like Conqueror and someone who wants to like be in command and be, well, in this story and every other cosmic Marvel story that he's in pretty much, be Death's avatar. He doesn't fall into a lot of the typical character traits that you would expect, or things that would be, a little too cliche, which is really just kind of fun and different as far as his character progression goes. So, assuming that this is what the plot for Avengers 3 is going to be within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which all signs are currently pointing toward that being something to do with the Infinity Gauntlet. Like, just having read this recently, it's definitely dated, but I think it's aged really well for an event crossover. There's some cheesy dialogue there from, how they were writing stuff back in the late 80s and early 90s, and you're going to get that with, I think, any older comic, but it's not as ridiculous as some of like the Silver Age stuff. It's definitely not quite that level of cheesy. So the story basically starts off with Thanos already having gathered the Infinity Gems and the Infinity Gauntlet, and he wants to have Lady Death accept him, and he's like trying to prove himself to her. And Mephisto, being his sort of second in command there, or his moral support, for lack of a better term, tells him that, she's not just going to accept you for having the gauntlet and the gems, you have to prove yourself to her. And what better way to impress Lady Death than with an act of death itself? And so, one of the first things Thanos does is takes the Infinity Gauntlet and aims it at one corner of the galaxy and just snaps his fingers, and a whole bunch of living beings just disappear. They're just up and gone. And so this obviously brings about some concerns on Earth, because you have just a bunch of people up and disappear. Like, there's a pilot on a plane that disappears, and so the Avengers have to like help that thing land and get everybody evacuated from it. And then some of the heroes are unaccounted for. All sorts of crazy stuff going on. And of course, because there's such a great disturbance in the sort of the flux of the universe there, Doctor Strange is sort of the one to relay the information to the Avengers and all the other heroes that like something is wrong in the cosmos, and we need to do something about it. So they start assembling this team, to go fight Thanos and sort of bring balance back to the universe. And there's also the Silver Surfer actually meets with Doctor Strange, but there's also Warlock, and he comes back into the picture having been presumed gone for like 10 years at the point this story's taking place, and people don't know if he's friend or foe because there's all these stories that they know about him, but no one actually seems to know anything really about him. And so they mount this offensive against Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet, and it's pretty much every Marvel hero that was important at the time that doesn't disappear with Thanos, messing with the Gauntlet there. But pretty much all the major heroes do show up. You have Wolverine, you have Hulk, you have Spider-Man, you have Captain America, you have Iron Man, Drax the Destroyer, Doctor Strange, like I mentioned, and so there's this huge team of characters that all square off against Thanos, and you kind of see how large in scale things get to be. Like Galactus shows up at one point, a bunch of the weird cosmic entities that they don't use as much in the comics nowadays because they're just kind of bizarre and don't have as much of a physical form, but a lot of them do show up and try and challenge Thanos, but because the Gauntlet is so powerful, he even bests them. And it's sort of this whole, question of like, is there a way to stop Thanos? Is there a way to stop him from rewriting realities and destroying so many worlds and heroes all in, the snap of his fingers, pretty much. And there is a plan in motion here, but it's the first few issues are more about the heroes mounting their offensive against him, and then the later issues are about, there's still some of that going on, but Warlock and Silver Surfer really being at the core of this plan to undo Thanos' dark designs here. So it's really well done for not just the time it was written, but just in general for such a big crossover event, because with so many characters and such a huge so much at stake, I guess, with this story with Thanos having the Infinity Gauntlet, it'd be easy for it to kind of get lost in itself, and it does a good job of staying focused on the main story at hand, and also providing like a real challenge for a lot of these heroes. It's interesting too that this is a collection of 6 issues in this trade version, and that these issues are all quite a bit longer than your typical comic book releases would be, and I assume that they made them longer for this being a few months that they were running this for as an event, which is great. I think that's something that's really cool. I'm always a little bit critical of the art style in the older comics, simply because I understand it was cheaper and it was faster because they were hand drawing everything, to kind of skimp on the details in some of the panels and all that and draw them as really simple boxes for each panel. But the crossover events tend to have a lot more detail, a lot more color, and all that, and this is no exception. Obviously, the character style is a little bit dated, and the way they draw the environments and all that. But here we can see here the opening. You do have some cool, like, big 2-page spreads there. And then we have some shots of Galactus and Cloak and how the Earth is being changed by Thanos' intervention there. And then we have some of the cosmic heroes here, along with Iron Man and Thor. And so it's really well done as far as the art goes. And like I mentioned, the dialogue's a little cheesy at times, but it's not terrible. Here's the back cover as well. I think this is new art that they did just for this trade release, because it's updated a little bit from the stuff inside the actual comic. But I really enjoyed this. I mean, it's a little cheesier than some of the more recent crossover events and all that, but it's still, like I said, it's aged quite well, better than I expected it would. And so if this is the thing they're going to do for the third Avengers film, or if they want to drag out the fourth, I suppose they could, but I would have to imagine that we're going to, kind of get down to brass tacks here with the cinematic universe and get to Thanos sooner rather than later. But if they're going to do this for the third film, I think it will translate really well. Obviously, there's certain heroes that they can't use because Fox owns the mutants and Sony has Spider-Man and all that, but still, I think you can do quite a bit, especially with all the extra heroes that Marvel's throwing into the cinematic universe right now, and I think it'll be really cool just to see how they take this in, or take the films in a direction similar to this. Kind of everything coming to a head, all the heroes going to square off against Thanos. So, if you like crossover events that are kind of just fun and also have, I guess, bigger implications for the Marvel universe here, the comic book universe, give this a shot. I enjoyed it quite a bit, more than I expected to, like I said. And I think Jim Starlin's writing in general is quite strong throughout, at least from what I've read of him. I've read this, I've read Death of Captain Marvel, and then a handful of other things that he's done. And I've really enjoyed his creation, Thanos, there, and just the storylines he's done with some of the Cosmic Marvel stuff. So that's pretty much it for this review, and with that, I will see you guys next time.